So I'd say they're most vulnerable where the human has potential for error and to fall for some of the more advanced scams that are coming on. Because what you're not seeing when you do click on one of those links, upwards of 100 processes that happen immediately on your computer within nanoseconds after you click on that link. Now that everyone gets really nasty phishing emails and everyone's maybe had a browser hijacker where they've clicked on something and their computer pops, pop, 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 please contact Windows, your computer is infected.
It's scary as a business owner because
Yeah.
like everything is online. You can't get around that.
But there are simple things that you can do.
Today on ASAP Unfiltered, I'm sitting down with Conor Egan, okay, with Queen City IT, who works closely with companies in the construction industry and has a front row seat to what actually is happening behind the scenes. We're talking about patterns he's seeing, what companies are doing right, but more importantly, what they're doing wrong, and what owners should be paying attention to if they want to grow. So can you talk a little bit more about your company? And thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Sure, of course. Yeah, so as Tasha mentioned, Conor Egan, I have a background in IT and in business. Was an IT professional for a long time and, then consulted for the government as a subcontractor for a while in the IT space. And starting this company, it was clear we needed to go above and beyond what the traditional IT companies were doing because there are so many new technologies out there. And so we take a comprehensive approach, which is instructive, I think, for this conversation. So I think that context is very helpful. And the baseline, I think, is important to understand as I see technology as tools to help us do our jobs better.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, we have, like you said, a front row seat to what a lot of companies are doing on technology standpoint, but also on the business standpoint, because nowadays they're so interwoven that if you're not connecting the technology you're using to the business outcomes, as you mentioned, growing, you're falling behind. And so, that's a little bit about me, our company, and kind of how we help construction folks.
Okay. And I should disclose too that we just hired you as our IT company.
Yes.
So this is still a very new relationship, but I will say that it's been great so far. And like your guys' communication, that's why I chose you because of the customer experience. So just wanted to say that up front.
Thank you.
So you do work with a lot of construction companies. So in that space specifically, what is something that you're seeing over and over?
Yeah, I'd say over and over, there's good and bad. So when we come into companies and, naturally we evaluate their technology, but the technology only really works if you have good processes in place. And so oftentimes, the thing that surprises me when we walk into companies is just a lack of documented standard operating procedures.
I think that's common in construction. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, on the good side is they most likely, especially if they're above $1 million, have been doing it for a long time and know it like the back of their head or back of their hand. And so they know these things very well, but if they were to disappear tomorrow, the company might not survive. That is a key man or the owner, whoever in administration or even in the workforce, they might just have all of it in their head. They've been doing it for 20 years and there's no way to teach that to someone else without them.
Yeah, I think that's very common in the construction industry. Like when I took over this company, that's what I walked into. Nothing documented, papers everywhere, just complete chaos.
Yeah.
But they knew what was going on at the time. It was in their head.
They're running it.
But so when it comes to SOPs, operations, how does that tie back to technology for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, let's just assume that we do have all of that stuff down. So we've got all of our standard operating procedures documented in something like Lucidchart or a company brain. When we're looking at implementing some of these new really groundbreaking technologies, and I've been around through the early days of cybersecurity, the early days of cloud migrations, and now we're knee deep in AI. When we look to go implement stuff like AI, it's got to be trained on something, right? And so in order for it to be effective in your company, part of what we train it on is the knowledge base that you have within your organization. That means, evaluating, each stage of customer acquisition to final billing to service delivery. And so, if you don't have those things documented, for example, then we can't do those things, right? But even, at another case, like I said, if someone leaves, then no one really knows what to do. And so
Mhm.
at a baseline, if you don't have that in place, your business could suffer, but also it's going to suffer from not being able to use some of the better technologies that are out there. So you ask, how does it play into the technologies? Well, the stuff we're doing, the advanced stuff we're doing now, relies on that. And if you want to punch above your weight, you got to have the foundation in place.
Yeah, and I think it's really never been, like, easier than it is now to create SOPs. Like, I remember when I
Yeah.
worked in corporate and we would have to analyze SOPs and, like, update them once a quarter. It
Yeah.
was the most terrible process,
Ah,
so tedious,
tedious.
and you're reading through, you're editing,
Yeah.
and it was a crazy process. Now, you can pretty much just, like, talk into your computer, brain
Yeah.
dump, and it will structure it for you,
That's
and
exactly
it's
right.
so easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are really cool tools out there to be able to help with it too. Things like Scribbly and other ones like that
Yeah.
document it for you. Or we use like Lucidchart, which is like the consulting tool to help map out these things visually for visual folks. But no, you're exactly right. It's never been easier. And heck, even now, as you mentioned, your computer agents can help you out with
Yes,
it.
I love my agents on my computer. Okay, so from your perspective, what separates companies that are growing from ones that stay stuck? Does it fall back
Yeah.
into that documentation, having everything?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it does, but why don't we just take the example of those that are really killing it versus those that are maintaining baseline? And
Mhm.
let's just have the underlying assumption that they have those processes in place and they have everything
Okay.
documented and
Yeah.
it is a well-oiled machine. So say you have all of that. That still doesn't magically make you grow. You may have great marketing processes in place and great sales processes in place and service delivery processes in place, but that doesn't innately make you grow, at least at the rate that others are. I'd say the thing that separates those owners, and they text me all day, so we talk about this constantly, is their risk tolerance. So even at a baseline, if you've got a company out there and you feel like you're in a good spot with tech, you're maybe breaking into some of the new stuff, you're doing well in marketing, it's those that have the risk tolerance to say, I'm going to open a new location in a new market. I am going to really focus on developing this new avenue. Maybe if you do a lot of installs, we're going to focus on the maintenance side and we're going to put in place maintenance contracts. It's those that are really willing to kind of push the envelope and say, hey, I know this is an avenue we haven't tried yet, but we have a good foundation in place. And so we're going to try it. And it might not work out, but we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think that good, like, owners and operators, they
Yeah.
move quickly
Yeah.
and they make decisions quickly, and I do that
Yeah.
too, and sometimes it's
Yeah.
the wrong decision and you just gotta pivot and own up to it,
That's right. Yeah, but it's not the only decision you'll make if you make it quickly and learn from it quickly.
You gotta learn quickly too, yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'd say it's the risk tolerance and I think it's willpower too. You can say, "Hey, I'm willing to take this risk," but you have the willpower and the discipline to see it through. That's
Mhm.
it. That's the second part of it because there's a lot of, yeah, I wouldn't say lazy, but I'll say lazy ambitious people out there.
Yeah, well, I think it's 2 separate people, right? Because like,
Yeah,
I have all the ideas, I, like,
yeah,
operate a million miles an hour, but am I the
yeah.
implementer?
Right.
Not really, I don't wanna do that, like, so
Yeah.
you have to have a team behind you that's ready to, like, execute on these moves for you because you
Yeah.
can't do everything yourself.
No, no, that's a good point. Yeah, proper delegation and hiring an A+ team is critical. Um, that's exactly right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is gonna be fun. What are the most common mistakes you're seeing construction companies making right now?
I'd say it does go back to the foundation. And so why don't we talk more specifically about what the foundation looks like? They don't have a baseline for, like Tasha and I have been talking about, standard operating procedures. They don't have a good understanding of what applications they have and what they do, right? So oftentimes we see people getting a bunch of ad hoc applications that will perform certain parts of their workflow that they want to do, but they don't take a holistic perspective of, hey, maybe we need to explore the one that we have and see if there are these additional features available so that we can use it rather than spending a bunch on various applications. I think it's also, evaluating efficiency, across the board. And maybe you're using some applications to evaluate efficiency, or maybe you're not. But if if you don't have a quality assurance policy in place related to efficiency, I think that's a big mistake that folks are making. We see that materialize in guys that maybe don't use an estimating tool, some of those estimators that don't use an estimating tool, and they get the dimensions wrong, or they don't use measuring tools and they get the dimensions wrong. And then it comes back, and I hear it more often than I like to admit. Yeah, we just had to eat a $150,000 job because something was wrong with this vanity that we put in, for example, because we didn't estimate it right or
Yeah,
purchase it
I mean,
right.
that's happened to us plenty of times,
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, let's just measure it maybe 4 times when we're on
right,
site, because I'm like, unless your tape measure is wrong, this
right.
keeps happening.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think having those estimating tools in place to help eliminate human error is important.
yeah, yeah. That goes obviously all the way to data, right? So making sure that you do have the tools in place to be able to feed you data, or at least manual processes to be able to feed you data. But a really tight organization over time will be able to analyze data from the estimating that they're doing, the
Mhm.
ordering that they're doing, the job cost averaging that they do at the end of it. Um, all the way to sales and marketing. Where are we putting our marketing dollars? Are we getting a return on the ad
Right.
spend that we're creating? And how is that broken down into the metrics that we're seeing in incoming sales and impressions and however else it's broken down? But yeah, I'd say this all balloons up to one, not having the right tools in place, and two, not taking action on the data.
Yeah.
Yeah, biggest mistakes.
So I want to talk more about like the security side,
Sure.
because
Yeah.
you talk like you're like not an IT company, right? Like you
Yeah.
sound just like an operator in business. So I think
Yeah.
that's what makes you guys stand out.
Yeah.
But as far as like the IT security side, where are companies vulnerable without realizing it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's a reason why we kind of have this approach, because we think of the business first, and then we evaluate technologically what risk looks like from that perspective. And so, we try not to bore everyone with the technical details of malware and ransomware and the various vectors of attack that are out there, but don't mistake yourself. They keep us up at night, and we're constantly in the fight with that. But as it relates to where companies are most vulnerable, I don't per se. I do look at the technologies, and I look at departments, but I look at as a former guy that used to go in and we did penetration testing, so we would like hack into company systems, and they would pay us for the insights that we were able to provide. And so I would say. Being able to do vulnerability scans on your company is really important, because there are so many attack vectors out there, and there are so many ways attackers can get in and exfiltrate data without you knowing, one, and two, with you knowing, in trying to hold you for ransom. But I would say the most vulnerable areas that I see just a modern construction company are in the attack lane. And so first it comes in with the web or email, your interface, your opening to the outside world, to the outside internet. And so that's your web behavior, monitoring your web behavior to make sure you're not going on even seemingly legitimate sites to where you could click on something that would execute really nasty things on your computer. And the same goes for email. And the same goes for when you're chatting with someone, in a web interface, on Messenger, or really anything else like that, text. So I'd say they're most vulnerable where the human has potential for error and to fall for some of the more advanced scams that are coming on. Because what you're not seeing when you do click on one of those links is the upwards of 100 processes that happen immediately on your computer within nanoseconds after you click on that link. Everything from malware being downloaded to your computer to running separate processes that, one, can log your keystrokes. So there can be a nasty agent that sits on your computer that logs your keystrokes, so that every time you go log in to somewhere, they have that information.
That's crazy.
Yeah, to particular malware agents that then go into your Google Chrome extension, like via the registry, and can scrub all of your passwords from a Google Chrome password manager, for example. To being able to then, what we call, like, we really see hackers logging in as opposed to hacking in a brute force attack like we normally see. And so, gosh, I'm sure we'll get to it later, but there are some pretty nasty outcomes that have come from people clicking on links, their endpoint getting infected, either malware spreading to a local server environment, or being able to access the bank account directly and withdraw funds.
What is the worst case that you've seen
Sure.
for a data breach?
So I won't say a data breach in this case. I will say I will talk about the highest dollar amount that's been lost that I've seen.
Okay.
And so a company brought us in because they were experiencing some issues. And after 4 or 5 calls with them, it became clear this is a supply company. I won't talk about where they are in the world, but this is a supply company that supplies materials that you'd use in construction. So they're primarily on the supply side, so they get a lot of small general contractors reaching out to them for, various components of what they need to do their job. It came to they had been scammed over several times, whether it be business email compromise and rewriting wiring instructions to a different bank account, or by the company itself wiring money on behalf of a scam to someone they thought they were doing business with that they weren't.
Oh my goodness.
Upwards of $250,000 in 1 year for a $10 million company.
How did they not realize it was missing?
They realized it was missing immediately after it left the account, and the vendor who was supposed to pick up, the vendor who was supposed to pick up the material as a customer said that I never sent this money in, and or I never received this money, and that all happened that way.
Wow. And there's nothing you can do about that? Or don't you?
Yeah.
I mean, there are business insurance policies that cover stuff like this, I
Great
believe.
question. There are business insurance policies that cover this. What we found was that they just didn't have some simple security protocols in place that they should have had. And the security policies, this is a whole thing. I don't know if we want to get into this. I can go on for days about this. Tasha, I think it was around the early 2000s, maybe into the 2010s, whereby the ransomware boom was on its way up. The ransoms for server-based environments and other environments were pretty low. These insurance companies decided, hey, we'll get into this business and we feel like it's a profitable business. There is a higher likelihood that this happens compared to other things like, the life insurance industry is more profitable, for example, with less occurrence of having to pay out. But they started offering $1 million ransomware policies. And that was the green light for any and all hackers across the world, whether they're in Africa or here located in the United States, to just go full force on trying to get ransoms. And so the insurance companies, after a couple of years of paying out too much and realizing it was a bad business model, said, okay, we've got to put all of these pre-requirements in place for companies to meet so that they don't experience something like this company does, and we don't have to pay out this amount of money to those companies per their policy. Because if they're not in compliance with the requirements for us to offer a premium, then we're not going to pay it out in the case that they're not
That
using
makes
those
sense.
tools. And so while you can get insurance, the standards are really high, and based on the forensic analysis I've seen some of the companies do that aren't our companies, but we've seen it, they don't get paid out as often as you think based on the lack of controls.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I'll further
History
say,
lesson.
yeah,
So it's the insurance company's faults with the increase in.
not at all. Well, that's part of it, but here's the main point. After many years of doing this, I'll often interface with FBI agents at the local Charlotte office at conferences when they're talking about cyber risk. And what I found is they're not going to go after anything. They don't really go after much proactively. Reactively, I think it's above $5,000 to $10,000 that they might look into. And so that's where we're seeing it more now, about lower than that. But the lack of enforcement, and it's hard to enforce overseas, right? Especially in countries that don't follow our laws and regulations and extraditions. And then two, there's so much of it coming in that they're able to only act reactively and not proactively. So I think it's two things. One, yeah, it's the reward. And then two, it's the lack of enforcement by law enforcement that we're seeing.
Okay.
It persists. Hence why we spend so much money personally in tools to deploy and so much time and effort in making sure all the doors are
Yeah.
locked.
It's scary as a business owner because
Yeah.
everything is online. You can't get around that.
Everything's online. That's right. It's all connected to the internet, but there are simple things that you can do that don't cost a whole lot to make sure that you're a step above the rest. These criminals are criminals of opportunity, right? Just like the people trying to break into houses or cars.
Yeah,
They're
imagine
not.
if they put that to good use, what they could do.
Yeah, I know, right? But the point in that is they're only going to go after areas that are really easy to get into, and they've got tools that run automatically, like we have tools that run automatically to be able to sift out who's easy to get into and who's not, and do it at a very fast rate. So
Okay.
if you have good security policies and procedures in place, um, you're gonna avoid 90% of the script kiddies, as we call them, the low level actors.
Okay, good to
Yeah.
know. So do smaller companies think that they're too small to target? Like, do you see companies that are maybe like a million or sub-million? Do they think that they don't need these security,
I
things in
think,
place?
yeah, that when you're in a business that size, seeing it from the operator's perspective, every cent counts. And I've not seen a whole lot that aren't scrappy and that don't look at every penny. Now to your question, do they think that they're less of a target? I used to see that maybe 5, 6 years ago. But I think, Tasha, now that everyone gets really nasty phishing emails and everyone's maybe had a browser hijacker where they've clicked on something and their computer pops, pop, 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 please contact Windows, your computer is infected. I think more and more, given just those two mass spreading spam type of malware and adware, I don't see it as much, but I do see more. Am I willing to accept the risk because I need to make sure my business thrives? I see probably more on that side. Hey, am I willing to accept this risk if my business thrives? And that's, with a lot of black swan type events, we see that behavior from smaller companies. But of course, as you get bigger, you have more to lose. And I think that risk profile starts to even out in the favor of wanting more security.
Yeah, I think it's also an education thing
Yeah.
too, because I'm gonna be honest, up until a couple of years ago, we had no like IT, no security company, no nothing. And we were running multi-locations, doing like probably 7 million at the time. And I
Yeah.
had no IT company. And I
Yeah.
was at a conference and like someone came up to me, they're like, "Who do you use for IT?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't have that." And they're like, "What are you talking about?" They really thought
Oh,
I was
gosh.
crazy, and I was.
Yeah.
So that's really opened my eyes a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and I found out what bad IT companies mean
Yeah.
versus good ones. But I think that it's
Yeah.
really like they're not educated in that space, and maybe
No.
that's why
Yeah.
people don't have it in place.
I think it's part of it. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. They're not educated, and they might not have had anything too nefarious happen yet. And like you said, they don't know what they don't know. Um, and so from security's perspective, yeah, typically people don't know until something happens. And
Yeah.
as you get larger and larger, the issues become really just exponential in their reach. And so we do see that where people have ignored it for a period of time, and then it's very expensive. If you're at $10 million, 10 years, you have a ransomware or other type of nasty event, it costs you $100,000, either in the damage itself or in the fix. So you're exactly right.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna wrap up questions with that, but we're gonna
Okay.
do some rapid fire fun
Cool.
questions. So
Let's do it.
just answer first thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Reuse passwords or should everything be different?
Everything should be different, and you should be using a password manager, which we're going to talk about shortly.
I'm the worst with passwords. Okay. Have you ever seen the password 123?
Many times. More than I like to admit.
Is IT a cost or an investment?
It's an investment.
Work from home or on site?
On site.
If you weren't in IT, what would you be doing?
I would have got my PhD and I would be teaching.
Okay, I could
Yeah.
see that. One word that describes running an IT company.
Always on. That's 2 words.
That's 2 words. We
Yeah.
can make it a hyphenate. We'll
Yeah.
do one
Okay. Sounds good.
Last question. If a construction business owner listening hasn't had much thought about IT or security, what's the first thing that they should take action on this week?
Try and look into some type of endpoint protection for your computers. Try and look into some type of email protection for your computers. And then I would say try and enforce multi-factor authentication.
Painful.
Yeah.
But okay.
But helpful. Very helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in
course.
here.
Yeah.
Can you tell everyone how to reach you in case anyone wants to contact you about their IT stuff?
Yeah, sure. So if you're in Charlotte or the surrounding areas, really North Carolina, Queen City IT Professionals is is our local subsidiary, qcitpros.com. And if you're nationwide, we serve clients outside of Charlotte that are based outside of Charlotte. We have a parent company, Orbit Tech Group, that you can reach out to, and that's Orbit Tech Group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Connor.
Thank you so much.